Hi, welcome to the No Te Rindas Intermediate English Stories podcast. Este es un podcast para hispanohablantes que quieren mejorar su comprensión auditiva del inglés de los Estados Unidos. Soy tu presentador Goyo, un profesor que vive en Atlanta, Georgia, EEUU, y de herencia mexicana. Una vez al mes presento una lección que enseña inglés utilizando una anécdota breve. Our regular listeners will note that my brother Gabe is no longer on the show. From now on, I will focus on one short story each episode, one per month, by myself. Gabe and I still talk quite regularly. In fact, I'll be going to see him next weekend. Hooray! Today's story is about Halloween, and it is not for children, at least children who can understand English. Although there is no vulgar language that you will hear, there will be descriptions of violence and death in English. Please listen in a space away from children who can understand the content. I want to tell you a story from my youth. My name is Ryder, and I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, although now I live in New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans has its share of scary stories, for sure. But for me, personally, they are nothing compared to what happened to me when I was 18 years old and just into my first semester of college. I was on the track team in high school with my best friend, Brendan. It was our habit about twice a month to go to Kennesaw Mountain near our homes and run up its stony, inclined paths during the off-season. We could do it in about 15 minutes and then run back down the road that twists up the mountain. We would wave at the bus taking visitors up to the top in air-conditioned comfort. On this October Sunday, he and I got together for the first time in a while, because we went to different colleges. We wanted to run up the mountain for old time's sake, as the saying goes. Our efforts were a bit frustrated, though, as both his mother and mine asked us to do several chores while we were home for the weekend. Washing cars, vacuuming carpets, shampooing dogs. These tasks slowed us down a bit. We did not arrive to the mountain until 5 o'clock, which is when the park office and the visitor center close. I recognized the park ranger that I knew, Joanna Wilcox. She was locking up the doors, and I had visited with her many times in high school. "Hi, Ryder," she said. "I think you have grown a little bit since I last saw you." "Yes, ma'am, I think so," I responded. "You boys planning on running up the trails at this hour?" she asked. At this point in October, the days were getting shorter, and the sun wasn't high in the sky at all. Brendan said, We've run these trails so many times that I bet we could do it in the dark." A serious look came over her face. "That's not what I mean at all," she said. "I mean, you really don't want to be going up the mountain after the sun goes down. When you've seen as much misery and violence as this mountain, you're bound to have a few companions that you might not expect," she said. "What, you mean like ghosts and spirits and such?" I asked, laughing. She didn't laugh. "You boys go get this done and get back home," she said. "I'm late for an appointment. It's good to see you." We both knew what misery and violence she was referring to. During our Civil War, the Union Army, the army of the U.S. government when Abraham Lincoln was the president, had attacked the Confederate rebel army all around this area. Twice during our schooling, we had taken trips to the mountain with our teachers to hear about how the Union had attacked Confederate positions here and in the surrounding areas before marching on Atlanta in 1864. Thousands of men had died all around the mountain, and many on it as well. We waved as she started her car, and Brendan and I looked at each other, holding back giggles. "Ooh, a ghost covered in chains is going to grab you," he said to me. "Ah, the trees are going to grab you and throw you down the mountain," I replied. Nothing particularly interesting happened while we were running. I heard a couple of animals in the leaves, and Brendan tripped on a rock that he couldn't see well because the sun was going down. We were walking back to my car by about 5:45, just as the last light was disappearing below the trees to the west. As we sat down, Brendan spoke up. "Ryder," he said, "this park is huge. There's no way they would even know we're here if we hide your car in the woods outside the park." "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked him. "I mean, let's go get my tent and camp on the mountain tonight. The weather is perfect, and who knows, maybe we'll see a ghost or something." I knew that I wouldn't have my first class of the week until Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. So it didn't take me longer than to start the car to say, "You know what? Let's do it." We drove back to his house, loaded up the trunk with a tent, a lantern, sleeping bags, and some other stuff, and then returned towards the mountain. Stopping at a Subway restaurant, we ate a couple of sandwiches and talked about our adventure. "Where are we going to park?" I asked. I did not want our vehicle to get a ticket or worse, be towed away and mess up my trip home to see my parents. We were young adults, yes, but I had told my mom and dad a small lie about my evening destination. They thought that I was spending the night at Brendan's house. "Don't worry," he said. "I can think of 1,000,000 places we can hide your car." It was now around 8 o'clock, and the road to Kennesaw Mountain was very empty. It was hard to see off the sides of the road because there were no street lights, but not too far from the second parking lot, which was now locked, of course, there was a small space to pull my car off and enter some woods for cover. I popped the trunk, and Brendan grabbed the gear. It took us about 10 minutes to walk back to the park, hop over the closed gate, cross the now empty parking lot, and locate the beginning of the trail. With me holding the lantern, we made our way up the first 100 yards or so of the dimly lit path. The way Kennesaw Mountain's trails are designed, the first 5 to 10 minutes are really, really difficult. They're very, very steep. There's even a bench there towards the end of the first part of the trail, so you can rest. After the bench, however, a trail takes over the landscape that, like the curves of an enormous screw, slowly twists its way up the mountain. This trail is so wide that it's really more like a road. It was plenty wide enough for us to pitch our tent. I hung the lantern from a young tree branch, and we got to work. By 8:45, the tent was up, and by 9, we had a small fire growing safely in the middle of the trail. It was bizarre to be on this whole entire mountain with my friend, and for there to be no one else. We did see the occasional eyes of another animal, like deer or maybe raccoon, but no human beings. We talked about classmates that we were still in touch with, who was breaking up with whom, and even about one friend who was already engaged, but to a girl that neither one of us had ever met. It was so good to catch up with my friend. It was like we were back in high school. About 10:30, we were ready for sleep. We had already run up and down this mountain once today, and then walked back up it, partially, to camp. We were tired. We covered the coals of the fire with dirt and climbed into our sleeping bags. Sleep came quickly. I had been asleep for I don't know how long, but I was awoken by a human voice outside the tent. I stepped outside, turned on the lamp, and scanned the area with my sleepy eyes. I heard the rustle of leaves down off the side of the trail and spotted what looked like a bobcat walking parallel with the trail. He was carrying a small animal like a mouse in his mouth. I heard a sound behind me and saw Brendan approach. Brendan said, "I saw the light." I went, "Shh," I said, pointing down the hillside. "It's a bobcat. I swear, Brendan, when it cries out, it sounds just like a child's voice." We turned to go back into the tent when both of us heard something that chilled our blood. "Pa? Has anyone seen my pa? Pa, Mama's real sick, and she needs you to come home." Just uphill from us on the wide trail was a small child, maybe 8 or 9 years old. He was wearing clothing that looked very old-fashioned, like you'd see in an old photograph, with suspenders and a collared shirt that could have been the illustration of a storybook or something. Brendan and I nervously looked at each other. I turned back to see the boy again, and only then did I realize that he was not a dark, shadowy figure like the bobcat or the trees, but was instead emitting a cold blue light of his own. "Ryder, are you seeing this?" Brendan asked. I opened my mouth to speak, but could not make any words. The boy kept walking towards us, but he was not looking at us. "Pa, where are you? Have you seen my pa? Mama's got a fever. She sent me. She needs you, Pa." I could not move. The boy was now very close to our tent and continuing to approach us. As he walked, part of his body passed like smoke right through the wall of the tent and the ropes that were staked to the ground. Now he was just a few feet from us. I could see the laces on his leather shoes, except those shoes were shining a blue light out in every direction. I started to think about running, but the boy suddenly grabbed his stomach and fell to the ground. "Brendan, what the man?" I managed to say. The little boy appeared to have fallen from being shot with what appeared to be a blue, glowing liquid filling the space under and next to him on the ground. "Brendan!" I screamed. Then the little boy disappeared. "Ryder?" he squeaked back at me, and I turned to look at him. Now I was facing uphill on the mountainside, looking in the opposite direction from where I had seen the bobcat. Suddenly I saw 2 enormous spoked wheels appear on either side of an enormous cannon. In front of the cannon was a blue glowing horse trying to pull the cannon up the hill. behind the two wheels and the cannon are three men wearing old-fashioned military uniforms, grunting and swearing as they tried to turn the wheels and push the cannon up the hill. Their blue bodies showed glowing buttons and buckles and leather, and they smelled of sweat. At that moment, some sort of explosion blew the horse off of his hooves, its blue muscular legs leaving the ground as it fell back onto the cannon, dead. The cannon, no longer being pulled by an enormous horse, began to roll backwards mercilessly. It pinned the three soldiers to the ground, crushing them, and then rolled through our tent, passing through it again like smoke, without even a breeze's worth of movement from the tent. It rolled off the trail and down the decline, where I had seen the bobcat not 5 minutes before. I turned to look at the three dead soldiers, and they vanished. "Ryder," I heard my friend say, "let's get out of here." I turned with him towards the downward trail, in the opposite direction of the tent. Now I could see around the mountain a little bit, and on this side I saw the ditches where troops for both the Union and the Confederacy had dug trenches and piled logs to protect themselves from gunfire. As I shined my light in front of me, willing my legs to move to do anything, the trench ahead of me to my left came alive with blue, glowing bodies. 4 men with rifles hid themselves deep into the ditch. One of them screaming in pain, his hand pushed against his shoulder. Suddenly, with a look of terror in their eyes, they all raised their hands, looking out into the open space beneath them. And one by one, they all fell over like rag dolls. Apparently, enemy soldiers had successfully surprised them, did not accept their surrender, and then shot the men in that trench. And these were their ghosts reliving that moment. This time we did not wait to see if they also disappeared, but turned to head back down the trail. It was then that I dropped the lantern. It rolled down the hill and hit a rock, its light fluttering and then dying. "Ryder!" Brendan screamed, pointing. In the new darkness, we could see all over the face of the mountain. And not 1 or 2 or 3 sets of ghosts, but dozens and dozens of blue lights playing out the death and horror of the Civil War right before our eyes. We both felt tears flowing freely under our faces, only to hear a familiar voice from back up the hill. "Pa? Has anyone seen my pa? Pa, Mama's real sick, and she needs..." We ran down the steep incline back to the park entrance as fast as we could, the rocky trail only illuminated by the glow of all those ghosts living and reliving their last moments. We tripped and bounced on and off the trail several times before hitting the bottom, and therefore the entrance to the trail. Soon we were in the parking lot in front of the visitor center where we had seen the park ranger earlier. Both of us were covered in scratches and dirt and torn clothing from our dark, rushed exit off of the mountain. Open sky was above us finally, and the sun was beginning to rise. It felt good to see light that wasn't glowing with a blue hue. We walked back to the main road and walked towards the car, trying to arrive before morning commuters began filling the road. I reckoned we had about 10 minutes before the mountain was bathed in full sunlight. As we passed a street going up into a neighborhood, we froze in our tracks. There, at the entrance, stood a little boy, hands in his pockets, looking back at us. "Ryder," my best friend whispered, "do you see that?" He pointed with his eyes across the road. "Of course," I whispered back. "Why is he looking at us?" "Hi, what's your name?" said the boy. I nearly fainted. He was talking to us. Then a man walked up behind the boy, putting his arm around him and taking a sip of steaming coffee from a ceramic mug. Behind us, we heard the sound of a school bus beginning to brake and slow as it stopped to pick up the boy to take him to school. I said, "We are back among the living." We both laughed and continued walking nervously. As we arrived to the car, a cold sweat suddenly took over my body. "Brendan," I said, "my keys are still on the mountain." We had forgotten all about our belongings. The tent, the lantern, the sleeping bags, our wallets, and, of course, my car keys were all sitting in the middle of a trail for anyone to notice. "The morning joggers will be here soon," Brendan said. "We've got to get back, quickly." Physically tired from all the running, sleepy, and irritated by many cuts and scratches, we reversed our direction and jogged back to the trail. No more blue light was to be seen, and the sun sent yellow beams of light through the trees. We moved quickly to pack up. We threw more dirt on the charred remains of the campfire, and we carried everything back down to the parking lot. We walked back to the road and past the side street where we had seen the little boy and his father. The sun was higher in the sky now, and everything was well lit. We passed the second parking lot and stepped off the road to my car. I opened the trunk and began putting everything back in. Neither of us spoke. We just wanted rest. From down the road, we began to hear the sound of a car. We were two dirty guys in torn clothing who looked like we had fought 5 cats and lost. The car slowed as it approached us, and I recognized the driver. It was Joanna Wilcox, the park ranger. She stopped the vehicle, peering at us through the passenger window as we stood behind the trunk of the car. She looked at our position behind my vehicle, at our torn clothing, and our many stains and red marks from falling off the trail. She didn't roll down the window. She just looked at us sternly, seriously, and slowly shook her head. "No!" She pressed the accelerator and headed towards the park. Before I do the quiz, I want to thank our regular listeners and welcome my new ones. Today's loyal listeners come from all over the world. More than 30 cities listened to our show this last month. Thank you to 2 locations in both Frankfurt, Germany and Bernie, Texas. Parece que están compartiendo el programa con amigos. Mil gracias. Toronto, Canada. We have a listener there that's regular. Thank you so much. Yumbo, just outside of Cali, Colombia. Un saludo a ti. Cuauhtémoc, Ciudad de México. Hola. Y oyentes de Stockholm, Sweden. as well as Potsdam and Berlin, Germany. I will have one more podcast in November before heading off to Sevilla, España. Me emociono mucho poder practicar mi español en una nueva región que nunca he visitado. All right, it's time for our quiz. Question number 1. Why were the two young men at Kennesaw Mountain initially? A. They wanted to visit a friend who is a park ranger. B. They were going for a run, as in jogging. Or C. They wanted to research the Civil War. If you said B, they were going for a run, as in jogging, that is correct. Question number 2. Who is the first ghost that Brendan and Ryder see? Is it A, a group of soldiers pushing a cannon up a hill? B, a small boy looking for someone? Or C, a little girl trying to find water? If you said a small boy looking for someone, that is correct. Question number 3. Why did the young men see a little boy as they walked back to their car? A, he was the son of a dead soldier. B, he was a live person waiting with his father for his school bus. Or C, he was Ryder's little brother looking for Ryder. If you said B, he was a real person, a real little boy, in the flesh, carne y hueso, waiting with his father for his school bus, that is correct. All right, I have an important announcement. Doing this show really gives me a lot of joy and satisfaction. But there are things that I want to try, skills that I want to develop that a podcast does not employ, does not use. So I will be starting a new show soon. And if you have children at home that would benefit from learning English, really, really basic English, not intermediate English, in December of 2025, I'm introducing a new YouTube program called Where Does Gary Go? Where Does Gary Go? Like this podcast, it will tell stories, but it will also use original songs, animation, and curriculum to help children to get started in their learning of English, all without difficulty. It's musical, animated, colorful, humorous, and entertaining. Now, I have many listeners that are loyal to this show. You know me. You've learned from me. Please tell your children about Where Does Gary Go, and let others know about Where Does Gary Go if they have children as well. On YouTube, December of 2025. Please watch for the next episode of No Te Rindas Intermediate English Stories on the first Sunday of every month. If you wish to support this show, please go to patreon.com/No Te Rindas Podcast. And if you want to visit our website or get in touch with me, I'm at www.noterrindaspodcast.us. Thanks for listening. Ciao.